Hello everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to preserve skin weight when you do rigging. So the project file that I'm going to be using is this one, birdrock_t, and you can see that I have 3 folders here. Images you can just ignore, there's nothing inside that. I'm going to save my working files, the files that I'm doing the rigging, here in the scenes folder, and in the assets folder it's the file that I use for referencing into the rig scenes. These are the rig files, rig scenes, and these are the my assets that I reference into the rig scenes, right? So let's start by setting up the Maya project. So file set project, birdrock_t set, and then I'm just gonna open the scene in the scenes folder. This is my rig file. Don't save, blah blah. Okay, so you can see that this is this beautiful bird, and Caitlin rigged this file using advanced skeletons. So nice job, Caitlin. And this is the file that we're going to be practicing with. For start, I'm just going to show you that this bird mesh is not living in this scene. It gets updates from a reference file, and you can see that because it shows a blue diamond here. And also if you go to file and then reference editor, you can see that this scene is referenced in, and it lives in the asset folders, assets, bluebird model.mb. So that's, so birdrock_t, this is this folder, and then assets, bluebird_model.mb, that's the file that is referenced into this scene, which is just the mesh, right? And we rigged it into this in this Maya scene. Okay, so now that we know that, we can start. And before we start doing the copying the skin weight, I wanted to show you that you can actually see the joints through the mesh if you have this option on, X-ray joints. If they're turned off, the joints are not shown into the mesh, but if you turn that on, you can see the joints always. That's one thing. The other thing is that I'm not going to work with the whole mesh. I'm not going to work with this feathers and tail and eyes because that's a little bit too confusing. The procedure is going to be the same, so I'm just going to hide them from the scene for now. So I'm just going to come here, and then this is the body. That's the one that we're going to be working with. I'm going to select everything else and just hit H on the keyboard so they're hidden, okay? So now, let me just save this file by adding a 3 at the end of it. 3. Okay, so now we know that we have a mesh that is referenced into the scene, and we also have we want to preserve the skin weight that are on this mesh. And you can see that this bird is nicely skinned to the skeleton. If you play around with the rig, you get nice deformations, not any weird thing happening here. So you can see that it's all really good, nice and clean, and that tells me that this mesh, it has painted weights on it. It's not the basic skinning method. It would do a horrible job if it was the basic method. So let me just get rid of that. So what I'm going to do here is that I want to preserve this skin weight on a duplicate of the mesh that doesn't get updates from the reference file. So you can see now that this bluebird is getting update from the reference file because it is in the referenced group, right? This is the group that is referenced in. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to make sure that, sorry, I'm in the build pose, and you can do that by going down to in the menu in Advanced Skeleton and just click on the Go to Build Pose to make sure that it is on the build pose. And then you need to just click on the mesh that you want to duplicate and then just hit Control D. So when you do that, the mesh is going to be duplicated, and then you can just do Shift P to ungroup that, just like this. And then I'm going to rename this to something that I can remember, body preserve mesh. Okay. And I've already created a group for this specific mesh, so you can just create a group by just say create a new layer. I just did that and named it body preserve weights. So you can just add this object to this layer, so you can always make it visible and invisible easily. Add selected objects. That's my mesh. And I'm also gonna add another color to it, so it's distinctive from the other one. So I'm just gonna do Control 1 on the keyboard, so it sorry, what's with my voice today? So I'm just going to do Control 1 to isolate this selection, and then I'm going to right click and assign a material to it and call this my AS preserve weight. That's good enough. And I'm also going to delete history on this mesh. Delete by type, history. That's good. And then I'm going to change the color to, let's say, orange. Done. But doesn't apply, maybe because I'm not in the 6. That's not good. Please do that. Did I not just assign this material to you as preserve weight? We have 2 of that. That's interesting. Nope, it doesn't want to show up. What if we do this? No. Oh, maybe because we're in this nasty mode. No, it just doesn't want to show that. So I'm not going to be arguing with Maya at this point. Let's just rename it to something else. Maybe it wants to do it then. Existing material. This one. Nope. Maya doesn't want to show us the... Oh, here we go. Preview 5 worked. Okay. We all know Maya is crazy, so we can just ignore that. Okay. So now we have this, actually maybe it was showing that, but because it's exactly the same as the other one, it just gets hidden behind the other one. So let's just do this. I'm going to use a smooth, I'm not going to use a smooth mesh preview on the duplicate one. I'm just going to hit 1, so it kind of shows through the other mesh. Hope that makes sense. Okay. So now I have a duplicate of the mesh that doesn't get updates from the reference file, and that's a good start. I can just skin that mesh to the skeleton first, and then copy the weights from the gray one to the orange one. Okay. So you can see now if I move this rig, the orange mesh is not skinned to the skeleton, right? So let's just start by doing that. We know that if we want to copy the skin weights, first we need to just skin that mesh to a joint hierarchy, right? It doesn't mean to copy the skin weight when the mesh is not skinned to a joint hierarchy. So let's just do that. So to skin this mesh, you need to select the top level of the hierarchy for the joints, which is this one. And just to make sure, you can just move your mouse over to the outliner, hit F on the keyboard, make sure that it selects the root, and then you need to select the mesh. You can just do it from the viewport by holding down Shift and clicking on the mesh, or from the outliner by holding down Control and then clicking on the mesh. So both of them are selected. Then I'm just going to go to Skin, make sure that I'm in the rigging submenu, and then go to Skin and bind the skin. I'm not going to worry about the options here because I'm just going to use the other mesh to copy the weights from. Okay, so now that the orange one is skinned to the mesh, you can see But with the basic skinning method, you get something horrible. I can just show you that. If I set the original mesh to wireframe and then do this, you can see that it is crazy, right? Nothing is good by default in Maya, and there's no exception for skinning the weight. You can see that it does this crazy job, right? But what we can do here is that we can copy and paste the weight from the one that works, which is this one, the gray one, right? So it's really easy. The process is just that you select the mesh that you want to copy the weights from, select the second mesh that you want to get the weights to be copied to that. So first the original, second the one that you want to have the copy of the skin weight. Both of them need to be skinned to a joint hierarchy, which in this case they're both skinned to this joint hierarchy. And then you need to go to skin and then just say copy a skin weight. Make sure that this is the default setting. That's its closest point on the surface. So it doesn't care that much about like minor changes, right? So even if the both meshes are not exactly the same, it still is going to do something that in most cases it's a good starting point if it's not perfect. So in this case it's exactly the same mesh, so it should do a really good job. So we just say copy. As soon as we do that, I'm going to make this one to look wireframe kind of again, and then change the rotation, and you can see that it does a really good job. I don't know what's the deal with this one point that does this, but we can just ignore that for now and address that later, maybe with Caitlin. But you can see that the skin weight is now preserved, so that's a good start. At this point, whenever you want to change the reference file, right? For example, if you're like, oh, I want this to be a little bit more chubby, or I want the mesh to be like this or that, you can just go ahead and change that because the skin weight is preserved on this duplicate of the mesh here, and you can always copy and paste it from this one, right? But before you do that, if you want to make like really drastic changes, it's best if you unbind this orange skin. Sorry, the original one. So I'm just going to hide this one and make this one visible and not reference. So it's better if you want to make really great changes, it's good if you unbind this skin. And you can do this as long as you haven't added any blend shapes or anything like that. You're just doing the you're at the earliest stages of rigging where you just bind the mesh and do the skin weights. After you start with blend shapes and rigging the face, you cannot do that, okay? So you need to just be done with the skin weight and the geometry changes you want to do for the basic mesh of the body, because this method is not going to work if you have blend shapes. Whenever you unbind the skin and it has blend shapes, they're going to be gone too, and you need to kind of reattach them. Okay, so before you kind of make these drastic changes, it's best if you unbind this skin, and I'm just going to do that. So I'm just going to save this in now here, and you can see that we have two meshes, their skin to the skeleton. Both of them, they're showing the beautiful skin weight that Caitlin did. So here what I'm going to do is that before I make these drastic changes, I'm just going to unbind this mesh by going to skin, unbind the skin, okay? So now if I rotate the wings, you can see that the original mesh is now unconnected, right? No big deal at this point. Let's just go to build pose. It shows a slightly difference, and I don't know where does that come from. I guess some of these controls, they don't have their default values, or maybe that's just the way that it is skinned. Okay, not gonna worry about that at this point. Okay. So now that I disconnected this original mesh, let's just go ahead and change the reference file. So to do that, I'm just going to save this scene. Okay. And I'm going to change this bird with the bird that is slightly different. I actually imported this mesh into another scene and used Maya sculpting tools to make a mesh that is a little bit different. And I'm going to use that to replace the reference file. So here, to change the reference, to change the path and actually change the reference, you can just do it from the outliner by going to the folder of or the mesh that is referenced in, and just right click and say reference, replace. Did I say replace? Maybe not. Let's do it again. Right click, reference, and replace. So the one that is referenced now is this one, Bluebird model, right? So this another bird, this is the one that I created actually. Really creative way of naming. Another bird. So I'm just going to use this one. I'm just replacing the reference file, right? Okay, so if I say reference, let's just cross our fingers and hope that nothing crazy happens here. Well, it does, but you can just not worry about it at this point. This is just a duplicate that is created in Maya because the feathers and everything were not presented in the scene that I referenced in, so I'm just going to hide this one. Bluebird polymesh, that's the bird that I created. You can see that it's a little bit, it's different than the one that we have. It has like this curve here, it's a little bit more chubby, the face is different. You can see that here, right? So now I'm just going to use and it is not a skin to the joint hierarchy, right? Because I just unbind the skin before I change the reference file. So now I'm going to start by first skinning this geometry to the joint hierarchy by selecting the mesh, then selecting the mesh, and then shift selecting the joint hierarchy, the top level, and then bind the skin. It is bound to the skin, but it does a horrible job, right? But no worries, because we have this, right? So I'm gonna select this orange mesh now. This time this is gonna be the first one because this is the one that we want to get the weights from, and then second this mesh, both of them are skinned to the joint hierarchy, and then I'm gonna go to rigging submenu, skin, copy the skin weights, hide the orange one, and voila, it does a pretty good job. Other than the part that was problematic before on the neck, you can see that it's not doing that horrible thing. So it gets update. It gets the skin weight from the copy of the mesh, right? And that's how it is done. Hopefully it helps you.